Alrighty, good morning or good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. So let's start today off with your GP. Okay, I'm going to start my seminar in a bit, but I decided as soon as I got here to go through all of your messages, and since I have a bit of time while waiting for my coffee, why not send my analysis, right? So starting with EG, so for today, we have EG, AU, and CAD JPY, all right? So right before I start, I just want to show you, right? These are the news lineup, right? We have Euro at 1:30 p.m. Well, this is since I'm in Thailand, GMT +7. So please go ahead and check forexfactory.com to check your time zone and everything for the correct timing of these news, right? So the news that we are going to look for any reaction or any big movements in the market is Euro, JPY, CAD, and USD. All right, different timings. And I think that it's great that when you pick some pairs for me to map, it lines up with news, right? So it's great because if we can get the right direction or the right movement, we can get more pips and we can end the day trading if it hits our daily target much quicker. Right, so starting with EG. EG again is quite a heavy, it's quite a slow pair, but because of the exchange rate, you get more pips. Sorry, excuse me, more profits. The more pips it moves in, right? So we have our sell zone and our buy zone. My sell zone is an engulfing sell meets another engulfing sell. Then my buy zone is an engulfing sell that failed. Price came back, played around, finally closed within, and created this engulfing buy. So you have an ES or engulfing sell meets engulfing sell, and EF buy or engulfing fail, engulfing buy. Alright, so current price is just right in the middle of these two. Since we do have a high impact news on Euro in approximately around 45 minutes, then we will see either it can drop into this zone or this up into this zone. All right, so we are not going to rush because it's only in the black zone, it's in the void, so we don't want that. We only trade when it comes into the zone. Remember that trading is a patience game. You have to be patient and you have to wait, be willing to wait for the right moment. All right, so current price is over here. What can EG do? Let's screenshot that. EG, current price is over here. If it decides to drop into our buy zone and H4 respects it, meaning close in, or it does not close below it, so it can also leave a look, right? Some do like to trade the wicks. So this is what it can happen. If it decides to respect it, then potentially we can catch a buy back up. But if H4 decides to close below, then potentially it might want to test a lower area, right? I'm not saying 100%. Mind you, I'm saying the word potential, right? Nothing is 100% in the trading game. So you have to think of the chances of it being a buy or a sell, which is higher, okay? And if it decides to spike up into our sell zone and respects it, then potentially we can catch a sell back down. But if it breaks above, then it might want to test a higher area or a higher zone. After breaking the zones, the price can either shoot up or shoot down, depending on the zones, in one go if the volume is high enough, or it can retrace back into our key levels for the opposite direction after breaking. Okay, so wait for that. Either you trade with the zone of the direction that the zone has given, or if it breaks, then you wait for the retracement or the pullback into the key level for the opposite direction. Okay, so if you're a low risk trader, again, wait for H4 to close, then switch down to M5 or M15. But start with M15 first because it is the higher time frame. The higher the time frame, the higher the movement or the bigger the movement. Right? So monitor these two for entry. If you cannot find any setups in M15, then you can switch down to M5. You can find either EF, engulfing buy, or engulfing sell as a potential setup in M15. And if you can only find that, you can switch down to M5 to find if you can find a proper setup. Or if you cannot find any setups at all in M15, then you switch down to M5. Alright? So that's for EG. Now next we move on to AU. Okay, AU currently is in our potential buy zone, right? It's an engulfing sell that failed over here. Oops, my zone moved. Here we go. Okay, an engulfing sell that failed. After failing, or even the process of failing, it created this engulfing buy. Then it played around, tapped into the sell level and dropped back down, created this other engulfing buy. And we also had another tap into the key level over here, but it did not create an engulfing buy. Either way, we have a buy set up over here. And for our sell zone, we have an engulfing buy, was respected multiple times, then finally failed on this candle. Right? So now this engulfing buy becomes an engulfing fail, and in the process of failing, created this engulfing sell. Price came back, created another engulfing sell. So now we have both setups for a buy and a sell. Okay? So the current price is in our buy zone, but it is right below our key level. So what can we do, right? The right thing to do is to wait. To wait to see where it wants to go, because if I were to switch down to M15, you can see that this is happening. Let me change colors of my M15. Okay, so my M15 has this, right? And engulfing, sell, failed, price came back, closed within, did not create an engulfing buy, came back down again, finally created an engulfing buy over here, then created another engulfing buy. But even though we have A, B, C, the price is still dropping, meaning on M15 it can still respect this, but if it wants to test the lower area, that means there's a potential that there are setups in the lower area of M15. So if I were to switch down to M5 to find that precise zone, we can see that M5 also has this. I'm actually going to take, no, we need to take this, make a proper zone. Right, so M5 has this in that M15, but we're trying to refine it. We're trying to find where can it go and what can it do. So M5 just closed and it broke this zone, but on M5 it had an engulfing sell that failed. Price came back, created the first engulfing buy, another engulfing buy. So you have your HLZ, hence this flag from M5. Right, but M15 only created an EFEG. So now when it came back down, it still respected the M5 and created that M15 second engulfing. But now you see that the M5 broke. Right? This recent M5 that we just drew on the zone, it broke. Meaning, what do we have to do? We find the next M5 zone that it can potentially test, which is this one. So, we have this zone right here, which is an engulfing sell that failed. Now you can see that the price was so close to tapping and leaving a wick here. And it could, right? Because M15 is still respecting our gray zone, our M15 zone. So if M5 wanted to test the lower zone, it could have been here because it just broke here. So that's how you use multiple time frames, right? Even if you find M15 zones and want more precise entry, you go lower. Okay, so that's how you do it. But for me, if AU and we have a USD news and later in the evening, it's best to wait for the H4 to close first and wait for the US session just to see where it can go. Because if H4 decides to close below, then there's a potential it will test a lower area, right? Because we do have an engulfing buy over here, an engulfing buy that was respected, did not, or an engulfing buy over here needs an engulfing buy even. So if it were to fail here, it might drop down just to test the key level here because it's so close to each other. Right? It's so close to each other, so it can test over here first before flying. Or if it decides to close below this zone and decides to drop down even lower to close below these buy zones or these wicks even, then we know that the buyer power of the buyers over here have been defeated completely, and there will be a likelier chance for the price to drop down even further. Right? But for now, we're going to monitor these key levels, and you can also map out these You know what, I'm just gonna mark it for you. So you can go down into your charts and find these zones. And if you know how to draw key levels, do so. Right? So you can see what it can do potentially if it does want to test these. So you can draw the key levels. We have our buy zone and our buy zone, meaning because we do have buys and buys, there's a higher chance that it might buy, right? That it might go for a buy. And we have our M15 zone also that created a buy. So again, with those lining up, there's a higher chance. I'm not saying 100%, but there's a higher chance that it will go for a buy. Okay, so that's for AU. Let me just screenshot this for you. Zoom in a little. Go and mark the candles that I've marked, just to monitor and see how it plays out. Okay, AU, current price is over here. If it decides to respect our zone, then potentially we can catch a buy back up. But if it breaks down below, meaning each group closes below this zone, we still have a slightly lower zone that engulfing buy meets an engulfing buy that I told you to monitor. It has to close below that for it to fully drop into the next zone because we still have buyers waiting in the area. So sometimes when you see a price breaking this zone goes a bit lower and then flies up, one of those can be these kind of reasons, meaning there's a slightly lower zone for the buyers to keep in, right? So you can go ahead and map that out and we will see. All right, but again, it has to close below this zone and the next zone for it to fully drop. But if it closes below this zone, we have to monitor the slightly lower buy zone for any potential buys. Right? And if it decides to just shoot up into our sell zone and respects that, then potentially we can catch it some back down. But if it breaks above, then it might want to test a higher area. Okay? Again, after you have entered, make sure you count your SLs or set your SLs at 40 pips from your entry. Alright? Especially if you are a newbie and anything, 40 pips is a very safe SL. Not too tight, not too loose. Okay? So that's for AU. And last but not least, we have CAD JPY. Right, we do have high impact moves on both CAD and JPY later in the day. So this will be good. That's why I am giving you 3 zones. You have 2 sell zones, potential sell zones, and a buy zone down here. In cases of it spiking, because this is a major resistance and this is in a major support zone, and in between it's a minor. Right? So potentially if it wants to sell from here, we can catch a sell from here. Or if it spikes from here, then we know it might want to test this upper zone, right? So there's that. And let's see, CAD JPY, current price is over here. What can it do? What can it do? I'm going to screenshot this. All right, current price. If it decides to come up into our sell zone and respects it, then potentially we can catch a sell back down. But if it breaks above, then it might want to test our higher sell zone, like this. After breaking, it can also trace back into our key level over here for a better buy up, right? Vice versa, if it decides to drop into our buy zone and respects it, then potentially we can catch a buy back up. And if it breaks down below, then it might want to test a lower area. Okay? So that's for CAD JPY. Again, go and map it out on your charts. If you are not confident in the setups, if you are a newbie and you don't know exactly when to press yet, just monitor and observe, right? Because when you trade, you have to be willing to lose some money. That's part of the contract when you get into this industry. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go start the webinar or my seminar, sorry, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good